Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers. In this video, we are going to be doing a comparison of the Asics Novablast 4 and the Saucony Triumph 21. Let's dive in. The Saucony Triumph 21 costs £170 or $160, weighs 280 grams or 9.9 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 10mm. The Asics Novablast 4 costs £135 or $140. It weighs 256 grams or 9 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. Although the Triumph 20 saw a number of updates over its predecessor, the 21's changes are largely made across the upper. The new design gets a revamped flat knit material to improve fit, as well as provide breathability, along with a modified lacing system for better lockdown. The shoe features the same PWRRUN Plus cushioning in the midsole and sockliner, an impressively balanced foam that manages to feel soft while still providing a good level of energy return. There's also a generous level of outsole rubber to protect that foam and deliver a high level of grip across varied road conditions. Finally, there's a heel lock design to hold the foot in place and a pull tab at the rear to make getting the shoe easier to pull on and off. The shoe is also slightly heavier than the previous version. The Novablast 4 sees some big changes from the previous version. The biggest of those is the new FF Blast Eco Plus foam that aims to provide a softer ride with more energy return when you want to pick up the pace. There's also an updated shoe geometry that combines the trampoline-inspired midsole with a higher stack of midsole foam. There's an engineered woven mesh upper that offers a plush fit, as well as plenty of breathability and flexibility, as well as a gusseted tongue to prevent slip. And there's a healthy covering of AHA outsole rubber across the shoe to improve grip and durability.
So a quick word on fit. I ran in a UK 8.5, which is my regular size. It's a US 9.5, and I recommend going true to size in both of these shoes. The Novablast 4 have a little bit more room up top from the midfoot through into that toe box. There's a bit more wiggle room. I think there's a bit more clearance of the uppers across the top of the toes, so that could be a good thing if you're thinking about using these for long runs where you might get black toenail, that kind of butting up over 2-3 hour runs. The Triumph 21, they are still pretty roomy. They're a little bit more snug overall. They've got what you would sort of consider a tighter, I guess faster, more dialed in, sort of racier fit than the Novablast. I think in terms of overall kind of heel hold and comfort, these two are on a par. The Triumph 21 definitely feels like a more natural shoe on the foot overall. That's because of the size of the Novablast 4 though, but I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
Okay, so the fit for me in these two shoes, I'm a size 8 in the UK, these are both size 8. The Novablast 4, I would say, is an improvement on the previous versions. I would stay to my size in this shoe. The previous versions were notably a bit more narrow than this one. It's about the same size, but this new upper is a little bit more forgiving, so it feels like there's a little bit more room in the front of the shoe in the Novablast 4. There's also plenty of room in between my toe and the forefoot, so I found it to be a very comfortable shoe. There's plenty of padding as well. I would stick to my size in the Novablast 4. Triumph 21 is one of the most comfortable shoes I've worn. It's definitely my size in the UK, size 8. There's plenty of room in the forefoot. It has a really nice flexible upper, so there's plenty of room for your feet to move around, and there's lots of space before the toes. So I'd stay to my size in both of these shoes. So I've talked about the Saucony Triumph 21 many times. It's one of my favourite running shoes. I use it for loads and loads of different types of runs, as well as the Saucony Triumph 20, which is a very similar shoe. Just has a change to the upper in the 21. The Triumph 21 is just a brilliant, versatile cushion shoe. It has this PWRRUN Plus midsole foam, which is one of the best midsole foams out there, especially for daily shoes and cushion shoes, because it just has a lot to it. It's nicely soft, but it's also got a nice compressive energy return in it as well, which you don't often get from a lot of max cushion shoes, or until recently you didn't get a lot of max cushion shoes. So what I found about the Saucony Triumph 21 is that it is a really comfortable shoe. There's loads of padding on it and stuff. It's got a lovely upper that just keeps your foot feeling really nice and comfortable for those easy runs, for those long runs. But it's also a surprisingly versatile shoe for a max cushion shoe. There's a nice little bit of bounce in it. It's not the bounciest shoe in the world. It's not like Zoom X foam, but it has a surprising amount of bounce for a cushion shoe. And as a result, it's a cushion shoe that really starts has become more of a daily shoe these days because of that versatility. And it's just a solid, great option if you're looking for a shoe that you can do lots of different runs in. I'd still say that it's still a max cushion shoe. It still fits in that max cushion shoe world where you want an easy run shoe or a long run shoe, but it just does a bit more, which makes it great value. Even though it's a relatively expensive shoe, it's a shoe that can do a lot. And if I was going to go on holiday or I was on a desert island and it had roads on it, I'd probably pick the Triumph 21 just because it's a solid all-round shoe. And the style of running that I do most is easy runs. I like a lot of cushioning. I just want a shoe that just feels really good, but also helps me to sort of move along, bounce me along a little bit so that I can really get to the end of that run in comfort, but also feeling like I've got a shoe that's helping me do that as well. The Triumph 21 really does do that. There are lots of other cushion shoes out there that don't do that. Cushion shoes that are really just veered towards that easy run side of things like the Cloud Monster, stuff like that, which is not a shoe that I would ever really use for anything other than the easiest runs that I do, which for me would be like 5-minute kilometers. So the Triumph 21 is just a fantastic shoe, and it's one that we do versus with most cushion shoes, and it normally does very, very well. The Asics Novablast 4 is an interesting shoe because it has developed quite a lot over the past few versions. The first version of the Novablast was a really surprising shoe because it was a max cushion shoe which had quite a bit of bounce to it. But it did have some issues as well. It was a little bit wobbly, a little bit unstable, and some people didn't get on with that shoe. Since that shoe was developed, the later versions, 2, the 3, and now the 4, they're a bit wider, they're a bit more stable. Into the 3, it lost a little bit of the magic of the first version because it became a bit dull, and just sat in that world of cushion shoes, max cushion shoes that don't really do a lot. It wasn't bouncy, there wasn't a lot of energy return in it. It was just a solid daily shoe for easy runs, really. But the Novablast 4 has a few updates to it which make it a bit of a different shoe. This midsole foam has got a little bit bigger. The geometry of it is redesigned slightly, and as a result, it's an improvement, a big improvement on the Novablast 3, but also I think it's probably the most rounded of the Novablast so far. The midsole foam feels like it compresses nicely. It gives you a nice bit of bounce back. There's definitely a bit of responsiveness in it. It just feels like a shoe that can do a lot more than the Novablast 3. It's also fairly light feeling shoe when it's on the feet. And it also has a nice rolling action as well. So you can see this got this pronounced design at the front, and it's got this quite extensive heel section here, which really does roll the foot forward and creates a nice smooth motion for running. So these are two shoes that are quite similar in a lot of ways. They're really max cushion shoes that are designed to have a bit more versatility. They're both shoes that I would say that if you were looking for one pair of shoes, and maybe you were a runner that was doing your first half marathon, your first marathon, or maybe you're a runner that does lots of half marathons and marathons and isn't going for really fast times all the time, you don't want the lightest shoe, you don't want a carbon plate shoe to do it. These are both shoes that can do that very well. They're versatile to a point. And I definitely happily run a marathon in both of these shoes if my focus is really just getting to the end in comfort with a nice little bit of smooth transition. And I'd go for both of these shoes for that. Now, when it comes to comparing these two shoes, I think it really does come down to that foam. And although the foam in the Novablast 4, the FF Blast Plus, is getting closer to what you get in the PWRRUN Plus midsole foam, I do think the PWRRUN Plus midsole foam is still a better foam. It's probably one of my favourite foams out there. It just has a little bit more compression and energy return in it. It just feels like it's a little bit more to the PWRRUN Plus midsole foam. Really, it's just a great foam that just delivers in every shoe that it goes in. The Novablast is getting closer to that. I just think there's a little bit less to it than that. It's solid, it's comfortable, it's a smooth ride. I just think there's a lot more in the Triumph 21 than in the Novablast 4. Other than that, they do deliver in a similar way. The outsole on them is, the Triumph 21 outsole is fantastic. It's got this really extensive layer of rubber. It grips really well in the wet. it's just a really nice outsole. It really does a good job of protecting that midsole foam as well. The Novablast outsole is really good as well. It's probably not as good at traction in the wet, but it's not bad. And I think it has had some improvements in this version over the Novablast 3 when it comes to that. So good solid outsole on both of them. But yeah, it's very similar shoes, which are a tricky one to choose between.
So for my run tests, I've clocked more miles in the Triumph 21, which has become one of my go-to every run shoes. And I've now done around 30 miles plus, give or take, in the Novablast 4. I've mixed up the paces in both shoes from slow and easy to marathon pace and beyond. I've covered different terrain, including roads and some light off-road river paths and park paths, park run kind of stuff. I also did a side-by-side mile to compare these two shoes, one on each foot, and here's what I found. So I've just done a side-by-side mile. I've got the Novablast 4 on the left foot, I've got the Saucony Triumph 21 on the right foot. The biggest difference that you noticed here, it's all about the midsole platform. There's obviously a bigger stack on the Novablast 4, not only in terms of the overall kind of height, but also in terms of the width and the platform that you're running off. There's much more flaring going on in the forefoot and in the heel with the Novablast 4. So overall, you've got more volume of that flight foam underfoot, the midsole foam underfoot, than you have on the Triumph 21. They just feel a bit more compact, a bit more precise. They're a bit more dialed in. You've still got a pretty big stack there, but it's not as big as the Novablast 4. The other difference here is that although the Novablast 4 now, I think, is tuned firmer than the 3s, it sinks less. It's a bit more responsive. You've noticed the rockering a bit more in the Novablast 4 than you did in the 3s, and they are a better shoe generally for sort of clipping along happy, and I think a bit more of a responsive ride than those past generations. They are not as responsive, they're not as immediate, they're not as fast, they're not as springy. I don't think you even feel the rockering sensation as much as you do on the Triumph 21. The Triumph 21 is a shoe to put on, I think, to go anywhere from sort of your easy up to your fast, but probably better at the faster end of things, whereas the Novablast can also do easy up to fast, but it's definitely going to be better at the easier end of that scale. Notably, they are both versatile shoes, and I think it's a fair comparison to put them up against each other, because you might well be asking the question whether or not the Novablast 4 can handle those faster paces. It's better at it than it was in its previous generation. It's still not the best. What I really noticed, that wide footbed sort of cradles the foot a lot, but you sink a lot into it. You still have to wait for that foam to come back. It's much more cushioned. It's trying to do much more of that, remove the impact of the landings, whereas the Saucony Triumph 21 feels like it's just trying to whip you through each of your steps as quickly as possible and give you some good rebound early on. That's not to say the Saucony Triumph 21 doesn't have enough protection. I think it does. If you like a slightly firmer ride, I think there is enough protection here to do your lower and slower and easier runs as well, and that means there's good versatility here as well. But yeah, I'll wrap my final thoughts when I get back into the office in a mo.
So my verdict on these two shoes, the one I'm going to go for is pretty obvious. It's the Saucony Triumph 21. I just think it's a really solid all-round shoe. I think it's got a little bit more versatility than the Novablast 4. I think it's a bit more comfortable than the Novablast 4. I just think it's a very solid, durable shoe. It just feels like you really can go for miles and miles in it, and you've just got a lot of comfort and cushioning and support in this shoe. It's just a fantastic long run shoe, or a high mileage shoe. The Novablast 4 I think is a vast improvement on the previous version, and is definitely a really nice shoe now. I didn't say that about the Novablast 3, but I just think that even though it is more versatile now, and even though it's got a nicer, smoother action, and it's probably better for longer runs than it ever has been before, I do think that it's just missing a little bit of that midsole foam magic that you get in the PWRRUN Plus midsole in the Saucony Triumph 21. So I'm going to go for the Triumph 21 as my pick out of these two shoes.
Verdict then, and this is a pretty straightforward one for me. The Saucony Triumph 21's firmer, more responsive ride is much more my kind of shoe. And even though the Novablast 4 is an improvement, I think, on the Generation 3, and I've enjoyed running in it much more than the previous generations, and it's considerably cheaper than the Triumph 21, it's still a bit too much shoe for my preferences. And by comparison to the Triumph 21, it's still too soft in the landings for me. So if you're like me and you prefer a firmer, rockered ride, even when you're running at your easy pace, the Triumph 21 is the shoe to go for. If you want a shoe that's more capable at top paces, go for the Triumph 21. If you like pillowy softness and sinky cushioned landings and oodles of plushness and a big old shoe, then the Novablast 4 is definitely the one to go for. If you want a shoe that's somewhere in between, But at Novablast for price, then I think the Saucony Ride 17 is well worth a look. That kind of spans these two shoes. So yeah, that's an interesting one to check out as well.
That's it from us. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that little bell, and check out the channel for all the other videos we've got. If you go into the caption below, you can also find a link to our podcast, which comes out at the end of each month. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.